Welcome to Shift. We have a very special guest today, Amelia Santaniello. And I invited Amelia here because she is a great person.
Oh, Jerry, you're so sweet.
I mean, we see her on television, but she is a friend, she is a mother, and she's really good at her job.
Oh.
And I met Amelia actually.
You're not going to tell how many years ago, are you?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to say that Frank was at Channel 11, and Amelia had just come into town, very cute and perky, and there were a group of us who thought it would be great if Amelia and Frank would meet. And so we had organized this ball, and
Yes.
Our thing was to raise money for domestic abuse. And we had invited Frank, and we had invited Amelia.
And the rest is history. It pretty much worked out that way, Jerry. You and the girls, yes. Caroline Lowe was one of them, and yeah. We used to do that great kind of charity event. We do all of the media. Well, the women from the television stations organized it, but that was a fun thing. That was kind of nice.
It
all
was
for a
really
good cause.
Yeah. It was a scheme, but it didn't really have to be a scheme. I think it would have happened anyway. And then eventually you began working together.
16 years ago, we began working together. So we're both television anchors. He worked at KARE 11, the other station. And yeah, and it was a little rough, I would say, in the beginning, because I had been at that station for 10 years before he came over, my husband, Frank Vassalero. So it was, I was comfortable because I know everybody in the station. We had a level of trust and a friendship, and I just guess I couldn't understand because he's kind of very type A personality, so he was just really sort of rigid. But then he was very relaxed, and I was afraid of the things that he would say on TV during the newscast, because I was like, we are still doing the news. You know what I mean? I was afraid he would slip up and say something inappropriate. But then I loosened up a little bit, and we kind of found our groove.
Well, working with your husband, come on. Every day.
It has actually been really, I know this sounds crazy, but it's been really good for our marriage in terms of, I'm a grudge holder, so when you're working together, the TV, the cameras, as you know, Jerry, the cameras don't lie. So if we ever got into any sort of disagreement before going to do the news, we'd have to get over it very quickly and just go on and do it. So I would say that it actually has helped us in a way, well, helped me. I don't hold a grudge as long, but unless it's the weekend and we're not going on the news. But yeah, I would say it's been really good, and there is a level of trust there that you have with your spouse that you probably, as much as I love Don Shelby, and he is, I call him my TV husband, and I worked with him for many years, and I thought that we had a pretty good level of trust between the two of us, but I think there's something like your spouse, you can be brutally honest, and they're not going to be offended by it, and he can be just as honest with me, and I know it's coming from a place of love, so there is that.
And Don and Amelia are still very close.
Yes, yeah, and he's doing well. He had, I want to say bypass surgery. He has, hopefully this has helped him, and he would be okay with me sharing this. He's very strong, and I was talking to him. He had had this surgery down at the Mayo Clinic because many years ago he had a stroke and they had put something in, and I think that for some reason, I don't know if his body just didn't agree with it, but because of that, over the years he's had kind of semi-strokes, but he's been okay. But this last one, the doctor is like, we have to go in and figure out why this is happening all the time. So he did have surgery, he is recovering, he is strong and determined, as we all know he can be, which will be very helpful for him. And he emailed me and said, I walked around 4 miles the other day. I'm like, should you be doing that? But he's doing well, so I'm happy to hear that. So hopefully I'll see him in a couple of weeks.
I'm very happy to hear that too.
Yeah.
So you and Frank got together, and then the kids came along.
Yes, they did. Are you going to make me cry, Jerry? Because I'm an empty nester now, so it's been
Yeah.
a little, just since Labor Day. you
Right.
know?
Well, so they are empty nesters.
Yes.
But I want to talk about the time with your kids growing up. Sam is the oldest.
He is the oldest. He is at the University of St. Thomas. He's the senior there. And then we have twins, Francesca, and Joe. So Joe's at St. John's, and he is playing football. And Frankie flew the coop completely, and she's at the University of Denver. And by the way, Frank didn't ask me to name our child after him. I actually loved the name Francesca before I ever met Frank. There was a TV show called Sisters, and they all had these really feminine, beautiful names, and then their nicknames were these male names. So I love the Francesca Frankie. And,
I do too.
Yeah, so that's why, because some people go, really? He had you name your daughter after him? But that was not the case.
Yes, he made me do that, and I still don't like it. So the kids are like really active.
Extremely active, yes.
Basketball.
Football. Frankie played volleyball for a little bit, but since they were very young, they were extremely active in sports. So, which was a lot of fun, you know. They just had a lot of energy. So we were like, let's put this to use, you know. And they loved it too. So yeah.
So you're trying to do your job, and you're carting kids around. Can I have some water?
But we were actually, when we first got married, Frank was doing mornings at that other station, and I was doing evenings. So it actually, with Sam, it was kind of the perfect mix of schedules, because one of us would always be home. And so Frank would be home by 11 or so, and then I would leave for work at 2. Then I would come back during my dinner break and all that to be with Sam, and then we put him to bed, and then I would go back to work, all during my dinner break. But then when the twins came along, we knew that we're going to need a little bit more help. And we're really fortunate, thank you very much, fortunate because his mother had lived in Denver. God bless her, at 80, she moved to Minnesota to be with us and to help us out. And we also found a lovely girl named Misty who would come to the house and help us out too. So when his schedule changed and we both ended up having then he went to dayside and then he went to nights. By the time he went to nights, our kids were much older, you know, and they were just doing their own thing and driving and all that. So we adjusted each time. It might not would have been what other people would have done, but for us it worked out. And I'll never forget when they were going into high school, I did say, because I talked to Frank about it, I'm like, I think they're going to need me home more, because, you know, these are these really huge developmental years, and a lot goes on in high school, and it's not as, you know, bigger kids, bigger issues. And I remember sitting down and talking to them and saying, so I was thinking, what do you think about if Mom was home all the time? You know, this would be so fun. And they looked at me and they were like, why? They're like, you're with us all the time, Mom. So I was like, really? But, you know, we made it, we wanted to, and on the weekends, you know, it was family, right? We did all the things with the kids, all of their activities and all that. So it worked out for us. I wish we were back to those younger years right now, you know, it's easy for me to say that, but I miss all of that. It's been an adjustment not having the children in. So now we've given all of our love to these 2 dogs who are just really enjoying it at this point, you know?
At one point, I thought the dogs were anchoring.
The dogs, we've been, you know, over the pandemic, our news director has been really, really kind. She's like, bring your dogs in, bring your pets in if you want, you know, for those of us who are working at the station, because there's a limited small group, which was kind of nice, you know, because they're sweet dogs, and people who were there really enjoyed having like the pets walking around. So now Frank has pushed that, and he'll bring them in during the week at night for the 10 o'clock, you know, so we'll be strolling around the station.
Well, I remember seeing one of the COVID things, and you were at home, and the dog was on the back couch.
Yes, that would be Louie. He cannot stand being apart from Frank. So yeah, that was kind of nice too, being able to do that at home. Just never in a million years. Well, you know the business. Never in a million. Would you have ever thought that you would be able to televise a broadcast from home? You know? No. I mean, I will say, technically, it's maybe a little bit more difficult, a little bit more work, and things can go wrong, but it was kind of nice being home like that and being with the kids when they were there.
Well, one of the things I was thinking about with you is living in the light. You are always living in the light. I mean, you have no escape, really. I mean it in a good way, but I also mean it in like wherever you go, people recognize you. You know, and Frank is a big guy. It's not like you guys are blonde and walking around Minnesota, you know, you're little. I mean, you are recognizable. And what I know about you is that you take time to engage with people. And I think that's amazing.
Oh, well, you know, we wouldn't be, our job would not be there if there weren't people watching us. I will say, I don't, you know, it's crazy. That aspect of it, I just never really think of that, I guess. So my husband thinks I'm crazy, but I'm like, oh, how do they know it was me on TV? Like this right here, see, this is me. I was at the cabin, so I drove up, so excuse my attire. But this is the way I walk around, and I always think, like, I have sunglasses on, so I'm always surprised if I have sunglasses or whatever, and I'm walking around, somebody's like, hey, are you Amelia? It just kind of throws me off sometimes. I'm like, oh, yeah. But I guess I don't think of it at all of, you know, when people come up to you. And I love when people come up to me and talk to me and all that, you know. So, yeah, that's really sweet of you. I just don't really, in my head, I don't really, it's a job, and I kind of can separate myself from that, I guess. Don't really think of it.
Well, sometimes we say around church, right, too much, whom is given, much is expected.
Yes, yes.
And I think that's true. I did discover one thing that Amelia, and I can't do either, is we were just saying how uncrafty we are.
Wish I was. I love those crafts you had up here. They're great. Yeah. I wish I could do a little more of that. Well, now I was telling you too, Jerry, maybe I can pick that up because we're not running around to sports with the kids and doing all those kind of things during the week, in the weekends.
I had a question from somebody that was saying, how does she change her outfits all the time? Does she have to buy them? You know, how do you do that? And
I will say it has changed so much over the years. Initially, we would have to be on the air, you wore a suit all the time, you know? And then all of a sudden, I'd say maybe 10 years ago it changed, or 8 years ago, where women would start wearing dresses or more, it's a much more casual kind of look, except for the evening news, I'd say like network, they still wear suits and everything. And I fought it for a long time because I felt like, well, this is the professional look, I should be wearing a suit, this is the way it should be. And then finally got to a point I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna fight it anymore. It's so much easier being able to go out and get a dress because my suits I only wore at work. And you know, it adds up the money and you're paying for that and you're like, these are totally separate wardrobes. I will say though, I always love a good bargain, so I do that. I know these men are enthralled about this story that I'm telling, but now they actually have a thing called Rent the Runway. So I started doing that. I still have clothing that I will use, but I intersperse, and I will still buy a top or whatever here and there. But the Rent the Runway, especially for professionals, or not even professionals, if you're looking at a special occasion, it's been a life changer for me. And my husband's very happy about it. Very happy.
I bet he is. Well, I am ready to take some questions if you have them. Oh, Mary. So Mary is the mom of Bill Dahlman.
Oh, we love Bill Dahlman. And oh my gosh, you must be so excited that he's back.
I'm very proud of him, yes, especially
Well,
since
he's with the other
you
station.
mentioned the other station, yes. He's the president and general manager for Channel 11.
Yes.
But what I was going to ask you is that one of the things he, as a news director, always complained about was people would call in time and time again about what you were wearing on
Oh, yeah.
TV. And he said, Mom, why are people so worried about what they're wearing? They're supposed to be listening to the news.
I agree with your husband. He's absolutely right. Isn't that crazy? And the thing is that people are calling in, it's about the women. Most women call in about what women are wearing or their hair or whatever, their makeup. And you know what? I mean, that just, I guess it's a natural thing maybe. And another thing is, in terms, I think a lot of people feel, when you watch people over the years, you feel like they're a friend or a member of your family, and you feel a little bit more, I think, comfortable being able to say that. Like, I know my mother, God bless her, if she was living here, I know she'd be calling me every day about something that she maybe that I got right or wrong. But and it's all coming from a place of love. But I do think, and I always say, I'm like, come on, if you want to criticize me for maybe the story that we did, and you didn't think that it should have had this, or it didn't have too much of that, I welcome that. And when people call in or write in about my appearance, my hair, or whatever, I try to, soak it in and try to be very respectful and just say, listen, so was there any issue with any of our reporting then? Was that an issue, But it is usually women calling about other women. And you get used to it after. I will say there was a storm when I got bangs. I can't remember how many years ago. You would have thought, honest to goodness, I was like, hold on, they're going to grow back, But that was everybody emailing in and all that. It was kind of funny. But
Oh, that would be hard not to take personally, I think, sometimes.
Oh, I know. But, after so many years doing it, I think initially when you're first starting out, like you said, it is hard not to take that personally. Now I just kind of go, I don't care. This is just, you win some, you lose some. I'm not going to make, everybody happy with maybe what I'm wearing, but I just try to do the very best, that I can. At least I'm not coming in there like, I won't do anything that's like a halter top or anything like that, right? So I try to still try to keep it professional.
A halter top would be, that would get a lot of attention.
Hi, I was just wondering, through all your years of broadcasting the news, has there been a particular time where it was a real difficult story to
this last
on?
year and a half, between the pandemic and the civil unrest and George Floyd, all of that has been a really, when you're in the news business, you always go, okay, that was my one big defining story. Sometimes they come around during your career. Sometimes you never have something that's that huge. But the George Floyd and the civil unrest and the pandemic are two of the biggest news stories in my lifetime, probably in many people and many reporter and journalists in lifetime, and even civilians in your lifetime. So, yeah, that was, I think, very difficult time for all of us. It weighed heavy on, I think, everybody that was in the business.
And I think to make things even more challenging, you had Liz Collin and Liz's husband being head of the union, and the vitriol that people had for Liz. And Liz is a wonderful person.
She is a wonderful person, and she's an excellent reporter and anchor.
Yes.
She really is. And it's unfortunate that that people were taking out on her what her husband did. And what his job was. And I don't really know her husband, so I don't know that part of him, but I think people have issues, and I get that, and, you are allowed to feel that way, but I think it's unfortunate that they took it out on her. And she had removed her husband was the head of the police union, Minneapolis Police Union. She had removed herself from those stories the minute they started dating, but it still became a point of contention for a lot of people, for a lot of viewers, so.
And I admire her for sticking it out.
Yeah.
I mean, she just kept doing other stories.
Yes. And she still is doing other stories, too.
Yeah, she is. You have been on The Talk? Yeah.
Oh, The Talk? Oh, yeah.
The Talk.
That was out in LA. That was a lot of fun. They were doing so they were a new TV show. It was kind of like The View, a group of women who were together and chit-chatting about topical, situations and moments. But at that time, so what they did was, because it was on CBS, they decided to go across the country and take anchors who were working at CBS affiliates and fly them in and bring them in. So that was a lot of fun. And that was when the original cast of people were there. There was Sharon Osbourne, Cheryl I can't
Underwood?
remember. Yeah, Cheryl Underwood, and what's her name? And Julie Chen was there, and then, oh gosh, what was
The Dancing with the Stars one?
Carrie Inaba was there the one
Yeah.
time I was there. And who was the one that was on the Roseanne show? Not Lori, she had curly hair.
Oh, yeah.
Sarah,
Yep. She
remember her
does.
name
She's
right
an
now.
actress.
she's an actress, so she's the one who started that. So they could not have been nicer, and it was a lot of fun. And so they did that a couple of times, and I was invited out. And then one time they asked Frank to come with me, so we both went out there, which was a lot of fun too.
Jason Matheson.
Oh, I love Jason.
So Jason was an intern.
He was an intern at the station, yes, back in the day, way back when he first moved here. Yeah, young 22 maybe years old, 23 years old, yeah.
And I have heard Jason talk about Amelia and how she literally, I mean, you would pick him up, you would help
yeah.
him with things. Tell us about that a little bit.
Jason, I don't know if you know Jason Matheson or not. He does a radio show, and he also does a television show with Fox 9. He is one of my favorite people, and we still are very good friends to this day. So he's a young kid starting at the station, and he was on the assignment desk, and that's when you listen to the scanner, assign stories, you're following all that, you make calls on stories and get information. So he was just, I really enjoyed talking to him, and he moved from Indianapolis and from Indiana. And he was all alone, and he was just kind of trying to find his way. But you could tell he was a really sharp person, and he just had a lot of heart, and he was a lot of fun. So I really just kind of, I don't know if I'd say take him under my wing, but we became friends. And I'm really, really proud of him because he knew what he wanted to do, and he worked his way up, you know? He got his way, he moved over to Fox 9 to do The Buzz with Robin Robinson
Right.
at that time. And then he just kept moving up, and then he got his radio show. And then he actually came back to WCCO for a couple of years. And then he had an opportunity to do, I don't know if he had an opportunity to do a TV show, but there was something that was going on that, because of CBS, because we're owned by CBS, he couldn't do both. So I think that's why he removed himself, and that's why he left. But then he was able to go to Fox 9 and then do all that. So, I mean, still to this day, he is the very same person he was all those years ago. You know, maybe a little bit more confident. That comes with age, right? And experience,
Yeah.
which I love, you know?
Yeah, I do too. So now all of us are a little bit older, but what's your advice for, well, any, young or old, everybody changes careers nowadays and has to become more adaptable.
It's a different world we're living
It
in.
is. It
Yeah.
is crazy. I mean, it used to be if you do this, then this happens. If you do that, then the next thing. And now it's like,
Yeah.
upside down cake. So what do you say to people who go, what should I do, Amelia?
For a career?
Yeah.
This is what I tell my kids as they go into school. Like before Sam went, I said, for him, I said, just find out where your passion is and what you love, and maybe find a way to make money that way. And I also told them, I don't expect you to graduate from college knowing 100% what you're going to do. I said, sometimes you take a job that seems interesting and there are twists and turns. There are so many people who major in something, they end up doing something else. So I think for me, like at this age too, I'm like, what would I do if they were like, Amelia, you can't do this anymore? What would I do? So I have been, it's funny that you say that, because I'm thinking in my head, what would I do? Would I write a book? What would I do? Like, would I do a podcast? So I think it's really about finding what your passion and what you love is, because I think all that kind of follows,
Yeah.
And if you're enjoying it, it doesn't so much seem like a job, And it's funny because I think these kids do have that flexibility now, because they're not so concerned about staying in a job for 25, 30 years. They're like, I want this job. I want my personal life and my working life be able to coexist and work together. Whereas, in television, when you take this job, you work these horrible shifts when you're first starting out. Like I didn't have weekends off until I started working at CCO a couple years after working at CCO. I mean, you do overnights. You work every holiday. It's like being a waitress.
Yes,
It's like working in the restaurant business. I mean, you have these horrible but I and as you know, people who did it did not care because that's what you loved doing.
Yeah, you don't
know?
really complain, you just do it.
But I will tell you this, kids who now come, I say kids, but graduates who now come in, they're kind of like, I think when they interview, they go, so I'd like weekends off and 9 to 5, you know, and just, but I mean, and God bless those people because they go, if this is not going to work out for me, I'm going to find something else that does work out for me.
That's true.
You know?
That's true.
And they're fine with that,
Yeah.
which is kind of strange because I'm all about security.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, oh yeah, I've got to go, and as my parents would be like, make sure you have health benefits, you know?
Yep.
I
Yeah.
couldn't quite understand that at 21, but then you go like, oh yeah, definitely. But it's a different world, I think, that we're living in, you know, in terms
Oh,
of jobs.
yeah,
But I
it
still
is.
would say, whatever, back then, even now, find out what you love and what you're passionate about.
So it took me a while to get a date, us to
Oh, I
get a
know.
date together, because Amelia is really busy, and she drove here from their cabin. So I am just so grateful.
Oh, are you kidding?
And-
Thank you for inviting me.
And I think that we've all had a great time hearing from you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure.